Shashwat Goenka, a huge round of applause, please.
What a great day this is in my 61 years, 4 months of living. I never imagined I would precede India's finance minister. But such is life. I'm telling you, under this government and with our beloved country now, even people like us can imagine for the best and receive it. I'll repeat this line when she walks in so that everyone feels good. And it's genuine. I have with me two young men, well, young in comparison, Devansh, Jain, and Shashwat Goenka, both who I've known as children, and both, to my mind, have had remarkable careers and have etched out for themselves a place of their own. And it is devoid of the surname, which is also important to mention. I've seen Shashwat at work, I've seen Devansh at work, rarely. Rarely not working. But so let me start by asking first Devansh and then Shashwat. Both of you represent, to my mind, the tomorrows of India. At times I worry about it, but we'll let that pass. What do you think is going to be the game changer for India from your perspective, both in business and in terms of the contribution that the young will make to India?
Thanks, Suhel. Love the introduction. But I think on a more serious note, I think the game-changing move for India is really the entire focus on the green, the energy transition piece. I think the recently announced budget mechanisms around the National Clean Manufacturing Mission. I think Modi ji, from what I understand, is really trying to get India out there to become a global champion. And I think whether you talk of solar or wind or now green hydrogen, I think that's an area where you're going to see investments which are massive. It's probably the single largest area where India's top 10 conglomerates are investing. I think we're investing a lot on that space as well. But I would say that's somewhere we could become global champions. I think there's a lot of move away from China. And to that extent, I think we have the right quality, the right engineering skills. So I would say that India could become a global champion in the entire energy transition space. I'm not too sure about AI and so on and so forth, where the US and China have taken a much larger lead. But clearly on the green transition, we could be fairly large. I think your second point is how we see India going forward. I think one change which we're clearly seeing, obviously there's been a very stable government for the last 15 years, and obviously I've learned a little bit of diplomacy, unlike Suhel. I won't make any undiplomatic comments. But effectively what we're seeing now is there's a clear long-term commitment and mission to what we want to achieve. I think a lot more younger people are joining politics as well. You don't have a lot of the old guard, which was their priorities are pretty different from what should have been their priorities. And I think to that extent, we get a lot more comfort that India is not going to go the way like some of our regional neighbors have gone, or Russia and China for that matter. So to that extent, I think it's India's time. It's probably the sweetest time to be in India, and I'm very, very excited and bullish.
Shashwat, you just came back from Davos, and you've obviously headed and are heading businesses that are both old age, but with a new twist. Whether you look at quick commerce, you look at retail. What are the changes you are seeing, and how do you think the budget has actually enabled more and more Indians to lead a better life? Ultimately, all this nonsense about union budget is ridiculous. Ultimately, what matters is, do citizens live better lives? So how do you think that has been enabled by this union budget?
So before I talk about this budget, I think what's where India is going right is its youth and young population, right? 65% of our country is under the age of 35. And when you look at major economies across the world, the big boom that they had and which kind of got them the growth was when they had that young population. True. And how when they came into the workforce with the right skills, with the right resources, that is when those economies boomed. And when you look at India, whether you look at this budget or the previous many budgets, right, each budget has built on the previous one with the same key pillars. And I think that consistency in policy, that consistency when you look at the outlook of India is what will drive us to, a Viksit Bharat by 2047, right? And I think when we look at our businesses, right, you're right, we've got a lot of what you could say are old age businesses and then newer businesses. But I think the idea is how do you reinvent each of these businesses, whether it is new, whether it is old, right? And constantly reinvent them because that is when you'll be able to cater to the new young population of India, whether you look at it from a consuming perspective, whether you look at it from an AI perspective, whether you look at it from an energy transition perspective, sustainability perspective. These are all things that are important to the youth. And each of our businesses are transitioning in that space.
So it's interesting because you also have a media business, a media empire. Last week on the 30th, Martin Sorrell and I and Piyush were speaking at an Amazon MX Player event. And Martin made a very interesting point. He says, of, let's say, 1 trillion that is being spent on advertising globally, earlier it used to be 60-40 in favor of traditional media. Now it's switched to 60-40 in favor of new media, so digital media. There's a lot of personalization that is happening. You, Devansh, are in a business which may be a B2C, but ultimately it will be responsible to consumers qua social media. We are seeing a lot of, trolling. We're seeing a lot of companies being made accountable. Shashwat, you're in a business where consumers are engaging with you every nanosecond. How do you think India and Indian corporations are equipping themselves to manage this behavioral change? And this behavior is changing every day. People who believe that consumers are now changing every 5 years, 6 years, that cycle has been disrupted.
Certainly, I think, the expectations of the Indian consumer today are on par with what we would expect when probably we went to London and the US and so on and so forth. And I think to that extent, quality is probably the number one criteria. Your products, if you're supplying a product, it needs to be topmost. No one's going to accept mediocrity, or you're going to get trolled to the extent that that product is dead. Second, I think in terms of service, and your response to service needs to be instant. We've had these experiences where people don't get back in 24 months and 24 hours, and we're like, what kind of service is that? If you're not going to get back, we're not really going to carry on. I think people have also become, they need immediate answers. They need gratification immediately. And I think to that extent, it's becoming tougher because India's population is so large, but that's also an opportunity because that's when you have limited players coming out on top and doing a phenomenal service. And I think, in any of these service-oriented businesses particularly, B2B or B2C in terms of products is still acceptable to some extent, but in services, unless you're right there, and you've seen that consolidation happening where you just have 2 or 3 players in every field in which we operate. I think that's what's happening. And clearly, I don't think anyone's in the mood to compromise with respect to anything. And we're paying top dollars for it. Yeah. So,
Shashwat, and the reason why I want to ask you a supplementary or an aside is, you've also invested in cricket. So you're actually seeing one of India's most desirous activities. There's just Bollywood and cricket. So when you made that investment, how have you seen, or what are the learnings you've gleaned from that experience and tied it back to your consumer businesses?
So first and foremost, for us, 24 months is too long. In consumer businesses, it's 24 minutes, right? But having said that, I think when you look at the investments in cricket, right, and the learnings from cricket, I think they're immense. There's a lot of learning from the sport itself, whether it's resilience, whether it's consistency in performance, whether it's thinking about the bigger picture, whether it's thinking about how to be a team player and how to ensure that you collectively are successful, not you as an individual. I think these are some of the key learnings that we've taken from cricket and applied to our businesses, right? And I think when you look at the changing consumer landscape, and as you said, it's changing not even every 5 years, I think it's changing every couple of months, right? So you have to really be at the cutting edge of competition, of technology, of trying to second guess what is going to be that next big transition as far as consumers are concerned, both from a products perspective as well as a services perspective. And I think consistency on delivery in whatever it is that you promise to deliver, I think that is what will determine how successful companies and brands would be.
So, given the fact that we will have the finance minister shortly, there's always been an issue with access to capital, not for big guys like you, but access to capital for MSMEs, the way our banking system was mutilated by previous, by Chidambaram and his cronies. It was a mess. Do you believe that this government has done better? And you don't have to say it just in order to be popular, you never will be. Do you believe this government has done more qua access to capital? And do you also believe that MSMEs are finally going to get their place under the sun?
No, certainly. I think it's very important that, let's put it in context. Yeah? I think over the past 7 to 10 years, you had crony capitalism, you had a lot of other stuff, and you had a lot of capital flying out of this country. Someone needed to come and fix that. Honestly, we went through hell in Inox Wind when, there was a challenge. And effectively, for us, as a group, we were fairly large, but to go to the banking system and ask to be supported, we got zero support because the culture became such that if you're going to get burned or if you're going to screw up, fix it yourselves or get the capital yourselves. And I think that was the effect of the past couple of 10 years where you had a lot of corporate India effectively building out projects which were worth 100 at 200 and, taking a lot of that on the side. And I think what's happened in these past, I would say at least post-COVID now, because we needed to fix the body. It's like cancer. You need to cut it and then fix it. The previous term of this government was very painful. Currently, I think if you're a serious player, if you are, with integrity and you're really building a genuine project on the ground, I think it's not a challenge. On the contrary, today we are looking at a situation where everyone's balance sheets are fixed. At least across all the large boys, everyone's balance sheets are fixed. The banking system is sitting with money to dole out and no one wants money. Raising capital has become fairly easy. It's contextual, it's subjective, but at least, for majority of the large guys and people who've delivered on the ground, raising capital has become fairly easy. So I think we've now fixed or cleaned up our entire banking mess to a great extent. I think MSMEs hopefully will get their share of dues with this budget and some of the announcements around MSMEs. They've probably been badly beaten down thanks to GST, the demonetization, and then COVID. But it's sad, but collateral damage at some point in time. But I think we're now on the path of, I would say very strong inclusive growth. And again, credibility is something which is extremely important. Yeah. So raising capital globally as well as within the banking systems, I think has become fairly easy.
Shashwat, and I just want to do a segue. Both of us, you and I are from Bengal. I'm deeply, deeply pained at the decline, I won't say decline, at the slowness that's happening in Bengal. And I'm a great fan of Mamata Banerjee's, whether you like it or not. I think she has her heart in the right place. The Bengal Business Summit starts tomorrow. What do you think, if you were running Bengal, I hope never, but if you were running Bengal, what do you think are the 2 or 3 things Bengal needs to do? Because they've got good people. The government is clean, they're nice people, but something seems to be missing.
I think the biggest thing that Bengal needs to do is stop the brain drain, right? And I think a lot of that is going to come with positive reinforcement of the good that the state has been doing. And there is plenty. Of course, there's a lot more that it could do. But that's with every state. And also becoming competitive, because when you look at the landscape of India and you look at all the states across India, each state is becoming, or the government in every state is becoming very competitive to attract investments. And so you are competing against that. And similar to our consumer businesses, right? Everything is becoming more competitive and you have to become better at product, at service, at delivery. And from the government standpoint, they have to become better at their product, their delivery, their service as well.
In fact, a lot of people, and I was there with Mr. Tata when Singur happened, when he went to Calcutta, I think it was the 2nd of October, to decide to move out because there was no home for the nano. And everyone at that time told me, what do you think will happen? I said, it's a death blow for Bengal. Not because it's a big group, but people want, as both of you rightly said, and I'm delighted you use that word, businesses want stability, they want consistency, and they don't want to be hassled. No one invests in places that they fear or loathe, much like marriage, but not always true. But I think Bengal suffered the most, not when Nano moved out, but when Raj Kejriwal shifted to Chhatarpur. I think that was a body blow to Bengal and its potential. That was the ultimate brain drain, but he's my dearest friend, so I actually mean it. I genuinely believe, and I totally agree with the phrase you use, brain drain. Bengal doesn't do enough to keep its good back. And there's only this much and no more that you can keep talking about Nizams and, Maya Ram. There's a life beyond that. For those of you who don't know these two, there are only two ways of moksha, the Mahakumbh or go to Calcutta. I want to, before the finance minister finally arrives, I want to ask one last question, then we'll open it out to the audience because I don't think they'll get a chance to ask questions. If you were able to project the future and you were able to look at India in, let's say, 2030 or 2040, what are the 2 or 3 things that you wouldn't imagine would have happened that would have happened? See, you thought it was going to be an easy Q&A, or we were just filling up, right?
I think given the stability and the mission this government is on, clearly I would think that by 2040 we probably will not have the most polluted cities in the world.
Good point.
I don't think any of the next generation people want to be here with this pollution, or at least when new kids are born, the doctors tell us the first thing you can do for your kid is leave this country. And I think they really need to fix that if they're really going to keep top talent. 2, I think by 2040, I hope there is no stupid inheritance tax or some other tax mechanism which kind of messes around with all the people who are actually creating wealth. Because if that was to happen, I would say Dubai is going to become the base for all of us. And I think these are the 2 points which come to my mind.
Shashwat?
I think for me, one would be, I think we'll see an India with a lot more wealth creation, and not wealth creation just for the billionaires, but wealth creation across the board. And I think second will be an India where you'll start seeing a lot more equal opportunity across the country, both rural and urban. And I think that is where India will truly get its prosperity.
So this is a borrowed question. This is a question that, Mukesh Ambani asks at every small dinner he hosts. And it's a very interesting question. If there was something that would give you sleepless nights as an industrialist, I'm not worried about your other stuff, what would it be?
Currently, right? It's clearly actions by government agencies. I think there was a term which was used about a year ago, ICE, IBCBINED, and it was very common in Delhi, where they said ICE phek do. I think they really need to, it's come down drastically, I would say, probably because the third term is already in the bag, but I think that's probably the only thing which would give sleepless nights. You now have a change of guard, hopefully at SEBI as well, and things cool down there. They were going way beyond what their role is. So I think that would probably be the only thing which would give me sleepless nights.
Shashwat?
I totally echo that sentiment. I think what worries me is it's not innocent until proven guilty. It's guilty until proven innocent in cases. And that really prevents people from putting in their best, prevents people from thinking big and acting big.
So let me tell you what I worry about. I genuinely worry about when we as a country will start respecting and being once again familiar with our civilizational legacy. I worry about divisiveness, I worry about economic inequality, but the most of it, the biggest worry I have as a citizen of my country is that I worry that we are still not working towards creating effective inclusiveness. You know, Martin Luther King said something brilliant when he said, at the table of brotherhood. We need that brotherhood. We need the opposition to behave responsibly. We need the government to reach out. Arun Jaitley famously said, it's the business of the government to run parliament. So they can't keep blaming the opposition. Rahul Gandhi, I've always said, his heart may be in the right place, but politically he's an activist. He thinks he's running an NGO, but that's up to them. They're still winning elections. I actually worry about the fact that not many of us are thinking about giving back in great measure. And I generally worry about that because I think the wealth that people have created now doesn't need distribution. So we don't need to get into that socialist mindset. But there needs to be more philanthropy, more accountability, and more giving back. Because as long as this divide remains, we will always be reminded of what Churchill said, that a country can never be strong because it will always be as weak as its weakest link. Now, I could have sung a song for you, but again, you know, haven't been paid to do that. So let's open it out. And I must say this, you know, both these men I've seen grown up, so I don't need to be nice or polite to them. But I think the points that they've made are valid. It's important for us to listen rather than just hear to voices that are actually in the throes of business from an age perspective. And I think all the points they've made are relevant, but more importantly, are contextual with what this country is all about and the potential that this country has in terms of harnessing. So if we have a mic going around, lovely. It would help if you came in front. Remember, this is India, it's always top down. Aao beta, samne aa jao na aap. So now let me pick and choose because everyone will be shy. Ajay Shriram. He's been president of CII, comes from a storied family. Arey bhai, you don't know Mr. Ajay Shriram? Now if Salman Khan was here, you all would know. Chalo. And he comes from a storied family. If I remember right, Ajay was the one who started a lot of the Kisan bazaars. Ajay, based on what you've heard, what are your thoughts and what keeps you up at night?
I think I look at it two ways.
A bit louder.
I look at it two ways. One is the sort of situation within India. And today what is worrying me a lot is the geopolitics outside India. So I would say within India, it is the difference between the states and the center and the, if I may use a little strongish word, lack of coordinated working. Because the center may make laws and rules, but there are over 40 economic policy laws which are concurrent subjects, where the last word is the state. So agriculture, land, labor, electricity, etc., etc. So the collaborative working between the center and the state is very low. I think that is damaging the economic development quite dramatically within the country. If one looks at the per capita GDP, per capita income of various states, some states, we are talking about Bengal, it's the lowest in the country, at 52, 53,000 rupees, I understand. Other South India in the range of 2.5, 3 lakhs, 3.5 lakhs.
I mean, if you don't include the money that they make in corruption.
I'm just saying whatever is coming in the papers, what one is reading about is the factual per capita income of people. You know, I'm saying with that sort of a growth level, the difference is very large. So that's one disturbing factor to me within the country. And internationally, what we've seen the last 2 days of President Trump, the way he is going and the irrational approach towards moving unilaterally, aggressively, without any economic logic at all. That's very worrying because that can create, and in this, my worry is China. Because China will get into dumping in India, and that is going to create merry hell. Our bureaucratic and system for approving, let's say a simple thing like anti-dumping duty, it takes years. But you know, the government also wants to show that you must lose for 1 year before they can say you lost money. So I'm saying these are worrying factors.
Got it. Karan, Paul, because of hospitality, then I'll come to Zubin. The reason why I mention hospitality is I've been a great advocate that India has completely screwed up its tourism policy. We still haven't given infrastructure status to hotels and tourist organizations. But we've seen rates go up across hotels, across tiers of hotel categories. Karan, what are your thoughts on A, how has this budget helped? B, where do you see India in the future?
I think I'm extremely bullish on India, right? And I think I concur with my colleagues on the floor there that there'll be a huge change, whether we look at 2030, 2040, the kind of wealth creation that's going to happen here, the kind of growth is going to be massive. So I think I'm extremely bullish on the prospects of India, no question in my mind. I think in terms of the budget, someone is asking me, how interested I am in the budget, this and the other. I think for regular business, normal businesses, it's immaterial.
Correct.
I think definitely this 12 lakh zero tax thing is a huge positive. But apart from that, from across our businesses, there's a very marginal difference. We are in shipping, we are in maritime, we are in some amount of real estate infrastructure. So there's some tweaks, but nothing so substantive that you'll bet the bank on it. I think we have to follow a regular business model which has got some economic logic. And if you do that well, you'll make money, right? But I think we should not look at the budget to suddenly be the panacea of whether we make profits or not. So I would just look at directionally, where's the government going? And I think it's been extremely consistent, forward-looking, visionary government for years that we've seen step by step. And I think we are all headed in the right track on the direction of the FM and the PM.
Got it. Zubin?
I have one more point, sorry. I would say in terms of hospitality, I think we have a long way to go. And I think India market is poised for a lot of growth.
Zubin? And then Karthik is the only politician here.
Yeah, I start with hospitality. I agree. I've been in this hospitality industry for over 35 years, 30 years, yeah. And I think we have a long way to go. In terms of, where we are in the global scenario, I would agree with Devansh. We are in a very good sweet spot, what you said. And I think now it's up to us how we can make it sweeter and keep the momentum up. We work with 70 governments in 150 countries, and I can feel the difference in the last 5 years, how they respect, Indian homegrown companies and Indian CEOs, and the value and the credibility that we have ourselves built with the quality, the service, the product, but at the same time with what the government, our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, has done and put us in the global stage. So I agree.
Okay. Karthike, I believe the finance minister is walking in. So we need an appropriate chair for her, and we will have to vacate ours. So you can ask her in Parliament. That's if these Johnnies allow Parliament to function. Thank you so much. It was such a great feeling to be Stepneys. Who cares? Actually, we presented the interim evening before the real thing.